Hello everyone and welcome to our YouTube channel where we are documenting our fertility journey. Those of you who have been following us know that we went through a very exciting procedure this past Friday and we are awaiting the results. But for those of you who are new to the channel, please go to the information card and it will take you straight to our fertility playlist where you can see all of our videos and all of our updates. In today's video, I'm going to explain some fertility terminology and abbreviations. About 4 years ago, when my husband and I started to try to have a baby, I was so confused by all these abbreviations and terms. I felt so lost and I couldn't find videos on the internet that really explained all the terms that I wanted to know. So I'm here to help today and hopefully it makes much more sense after you've watched this video. So the first abbreviation that I will explain today is TTC. So TTC stands for Trying to Conceive. You will come across this in fertility blogs and vlogs, and it took me a while to figure out what it stands for, but that is basically when you want a baby, you are trying to conceive. In order to understand many of the terms that I will explain today, I'm first going to just give a brief overview of the menstrual cycle, which is absolutely necessary to conceive. So sorry if this is a repetition of what you did in biology at school, but here goes. So each month, a woman goes through her menstrual cycle, or most women do. I'm going to refer to the generic terms, the most general way that things happen. Of course, there are exceptions, and many women experience periods and menstrual cycles in many different ways. But just for the sake of explanation, I'm going to refer to the most general way it works. So it's very important to understand the menstrual cycle when you are trying to conceive. So each month, your uterus, and that is where the baby will eventually grow, the uterus's lining thickens. The lining is there to support the baby that might be there, but if there is not a fertilized egg that enters the uterus, the lining is shed, and that is called your period or having your period. So it typically lasts 5 to 7 days, during which blood and tissue leave the vagina, and that is called your period. So when you have your period, that is the first couple of days or 5 to 7 days of your cycle. Then at about halfway through the cycle, about 14 days into the cycle, more or less, once again this differs, mine for example is more on day 11 or 12, but somewhere around the middle of your cycle, ovulation takes place. So that is when an egg is released from your ovaries. This egg then travels through the fallopian tube on its way to the uterus, and if it meets sperm there and it is fertilized, it will enter the uterus and eventually hopefully grow into a baby. Once again, if a fertilized egg does not eventually form into a baby, the uterus lining is shed once again, and once again you have your period. Now, one of the reasons why I explained all of this very briefly is because that brings me to my next term that I want to explain, which is the fertile window. So, male sperm can live inside of the female body for about 5 to 7 days. But an egg that is released from an ovary can only be fertilized within 12 to 24 hours after its release. So technically, you can get pregnant only for 12 to 24 hours after the egg is released, after ovulation in other words. But because sperm can live for longer inside the female body, that is why you call it the fertile window. So you have about 6 days, which is the opportune time for you to get pregnant. That is why many couples opt for timed intercourse, which means that they then have intercourse during the fertile window in order to have sperm ready and waiting when the egg enters the fallopian tubes, and hopefully it is fertilized, enters the uterus, and eventually grow into a baby. If you then do have intercourse during that time, it takes about 2 weeks for you to find out whether it worked or not and whether you are pregnant or not, and for that we refer to the TWW, which is the 2-week wait. Now, if you think about this, all of this makes sense because the cycle is about 28 days long. You ovulate more or less in the middle about day 14. So before your next cycle starts, which is 2 weeks, by the end of the 2 weeks, you will know whether you are pregnant or not. So when you are TTC or trying to conceive, an important term that you will also come across is DPO, which refers to days past ovulation. Now, typically you can start testing for pregnancy at about 12 DPO. So you will often see on the vlogs and in the blogs that people refer to, I am now 8 DPO or 9 DPO. And that's typically an indication of how many days after ovulation you're at the moment. Then the following two terms took me quite a while to figure out, and I actually saw it on a blog one day where someone asked, sorry, I don't want to be rude or irritating, but what do these abbreviations actually mean? And they are BFP and BFN. And they stand for big fat positive and big fat negative. That is when you do your pregnancy test and you see that your test is positive or negative. So just quickly how a home pregnancy test works is it tests for HCG, which is the human chorionic gonadotropin, and that is something that is visible in your urine, or detectable in your urine rather, once you are pregnant. So that is how a home pregnancy test works. More specifically, HCG can be detected right after a fertilized egg attaches to the wall of a human's uterus. Now, if you have been trying to get pregnant for quite some time and you are part of the infertility community, the next couple of terms you will find very interesting. And also, as I've been doing these videos, many friends or family have been asking, what do all of these things mean? And I understand completely that it can become very confusing if you're not right up to date with every single event that takes place. So infertility, that is typically the inability to get pregnant after a year of unprotected intercourse. So typically doctors will say if you've been trying for a year and now keeping timed intercourse and the fertile window, all of that in mind, and you have not been successful, it can be classified as infertility. So if it doesn't happen naturally, you might need some help, assisted reproduction, or also called ART or ART, and that stands for artificial reproduction technology. Now, there are many procedures that fall under this, and the ones that I'm going to refer to today will be IVF, ICSI, and an IUI. So let's start with IVF. IVF stands for in vitro fertilization. That is basically where they retrieve the egg from the woman's body and take a male's sperm. They put it together and certain eggs will fertilize, and then they place the fertilized eggs back into the womb, and hopefully it latches and grows into babies or a baby. ICSI stands for intracytoplasmic sperm injection. The entire process is exactly the same as IVF, but instead of just putting the sperm and the eggs together, with ICSI they take one single sperma and they inject it into the egg, so they fertilize the egg manually. Those fertilized eggs, or how many ever you decide upon, will then also be transferred back into the uterus. Now, for both ICSI and IVF, the process is similar. So you have injections that start round about day 3 of your cycle, so while you still have your period. And those injections are basically to feed the eggs that you have, to make sure that as many as possible survive. I did explain this in a previous video, but just quickly to repeat, each woman is born with a certain number of eggs that will be released during her lifetime, but also each month's eggs are also predetermined. So each month you have a certain amount of eggs that will be released, or a certain number of eggs rather, and once they are fertilized, it might grow into a baby. So when you do IVF or ICSI, it is ideal to have as many healthy eggs as possible so that they can retrieve them, fertilize them, and then put them back into the uterus. So what happened to us this month is I went through the ICSI procedure, but once we got to the number of eggs, I only had 2. And you get a little bit greedy when you want to do ICSI because you want the chances to be much better and the probabilities to be much higher. So for that reason, we decided not to continue with the ICSI, but rather to do artificial insemination with the 2 remaining eggs. Which brings me to my next term. So an IUI, or intrauterine insemination, is exactly the same thing as artificial insemination. Basically that means that sperm is injected right or straight into the uterus, or as close to the eggs as possible, to maximize the chances of the egg being fertilized. Fertility treatment is really just a numbers game, and it's all about probabilities and statistics, but actually in truth you never know which procedure might work. Sometimes people opt for artificial insemination and that works immediately. Sometimes they do IVF 5 or 6 times. It all depends on when it works and how it works, and you really can't say ahead of time. So at the moment we are in our TWW, and I'm very excited to find out whether it worked or not, but only time will tell, I suppose. But I really hope that today's explanations helped you to understand some of the procedures and some of the fertility terminology when you are trying to conceive. If you are trying to conceive, good luck on your journey. It might take a little bit longer than you anticipated, or it might happen right away. But either way, I would really recommend becoming part of the online community where people with fertility and infertility issues really join up and communicate with each other, and that's also one of the reasons why we started this channel. So if you would like to follow our journey, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Francia and I would absolutely love it if you join us.